Bom dia. That's it. We're done, no more. Everything else in English. So thank you for inviting me to be here today. And we're going to talk about Apple and transformation. Not Apple products, but what we at Apple believe about education. So Apple is based upon the concept of innovation and empowerment. We expect people to always try for new things. And empowering is about empowering the individual. We really produced the first personal computer that really transformed the computer industry, because Steve Jobs felt like the computer was a bicycle for the mind. It would take you places where you simply couldn't go before. And so that's really what we think about Apple and education, is that how do we make sure that we're providing you with the best tools for the mind, for students to actually be empowered to be their best. So we've had a place, we've had an impact on transformation. We transformed the computer industry with the personal computer. We transformed the music industry. Anybody remember the iPod? We transformed the phone industry. Fernando's talked about it this morning. Nobody said, why should Apple build a phone? But today, all the smartphones are based upon what we produced with the first iPhone. And then we are in the process of transforming the publishing industry, because the change and the shift from paper textbooks to digital textbooks and how easy it is. I don't carry paper books with me anymore. I travel so much, and it's all about carrying all of my books on my iPad. And we really believe we're in the process of helping schools transform, go drop the walls down and really make that change that's so essential for us for school. So why is it essential? Why must we transform our schools? That's the question. I think about it in terms of student expectations. If you were a university student today, when you were 0 to 1, Netscape already existed as a browser. But then you look, Google when they were 3, the iPod when they were 6, Facebook, Twitter. But look at the primary school student, any child born in 2008. All of these things were existing. And so there's a saying that it's only technology if it was created after you were born. So to these students, none of these things are technology. That means our schools have to change because our students expect all of this technology to be available to them. So I think of this, there are a bunch of different studies out there and books that speak to the fact that we need to change and we need to transform what we're doing. The 2 books on the end are by Tony Wagner, who's a professor of education at Harvard University. His first book was all about what we have to do to close the achievement gap. And he said that in schools, we are rewarding students for the exact opposite of what gets rewarded in the real world. And then he wrote the book, Creating Innovators, because he wanted to know, are they born as innovators? If so, we're off the hook. Schools have no responsibility if it's born that way. And so he wanted to study people who are innovators and find out. And so he studied innovators, and he said, the good news is we can create innovators. The bad news, we're not doing a very good job of it. So in addition to the works that they've done, there is a research document called Work Skills or Future Work Skills 2020. And I like this better than the 21st century skills, because really, how much longer do you have before you are out of the 21st century? 85 years. So you could take until then to really change your schools. But there are pressing needs for us to change sooner. And this is less than 5 years. Less than 5 years, you need to make sure your students have the skills that are in that report. How many of you are familiar with Seymour Papert? I can't see very many. One person, okay. So Seymour Papert created the logo programming language because he thought students could learn geometry much earlier than we teach it in school. And then he was the person responsible for the first one-to-one laptop program statewide in the US. So the state of Maine has been doing technology on a one-to-one, every student has a device, for 15 years now. And so they're transforming the state of Maine because they needed to do something because they had economic woes. All of their factories disappeared, and they needed to make sure that they had some viable way of income for people. And so they thought having a literate, technology-literate workforce was and it's working for them. So Seymour is responsible for that. And he has a saying that he says, the job of a teacher today is not to teach ready-made information, but to create the conditions for invention. How many of you are school leaders? How many of you can walk into a teacher's classroom and understand, are they creating the conditions for invention? Are students taking risks? Are we doing in our schools what we've done for years, and that is tell students what to do, when to do it, how long to do it, when to stand, when to sit? For me personally, I was out of my classroom almost for an entire year before I knew that I could go use the baños anytime I wanted. So they trained me as the teacher. So how do we know? And then the last one on here is inevitable. And the authors of that are two former educators, and they say that we've always known that we're supposed to personalize learning, but it was impossible. And now it is inevitable. Because what are you going to do when the children coming into your schools are like this child in the picture? They're eating technology at a very early age. And they're learning things faster than the school curriculum expects them to. So my thing is get out of the student's way and let them perform at the speed that they're capable of. And we tend to put, I don't know if it translates very well, a governor on the learning of our students. We determine how fast they can go, or how fast they must go if they can't go that fast. And so we have to meet the needs of this child, because our schools are not ready for this influx of students who are coming. So what are the essential elements for learning? I do a lot of work right now with Dr. John Medina. Any of you familiar with him? He is a neuroscientist, and as a neuroscientist, he wrote the book Brain Rules. It is my observation that in school we are creating and committing education malpractice. Because when I was a teacher, we didn't know anything about the brain. We just guessed. But the truth is, there's a lot of science out there right now. And here's what John Medina talks about. He says the human brain was designed to solve problems, and to solve problems and how to survive on the Serengeti. So how we had to be fast, and we had to think fast because we had to escape those animals. So if you wanted to design a learning environment that is exactly the opposite of what the brain needs, you would invent schools. All right? So the way in which schools operate is the antithesis of how the brain learns. So there is a mismatch between the science and what schools do. So what do we do? How do we change? So I like to use the work of Dan Pink. Many of you must be familiar with this, his book Drive. What motivates us to learn? We want our students to be self-motivated. We want them to own their learning, because that's what the research says. If you are in charge of your learning, you will learn deeply. So, schools operate on extrinsic motivation. That's we tell the kids what they need instead of giving them control. It's kind of the carrots and the sticks. I'm told that this doesn't translate into Spanish. I don't know if it translates into Portuguese. But usually we dangle a reward in front of our students. And so they have to do what we ask them to if they're going to get that carrot. What we really want is our students to be driving the carrot. They need to be in control, and they need to be able to take that thing where they need to go. There are 7 fatal flaws with basing our education system on extrinsic motivation. You know, it cuts creativity. It extinguishes intrinsic motivation. Students do things, and how many of you have ever heard this? Is that going to be on the test? What do you want me to do? Because I'm not going to do anything other than what you want me to do because I just want the grade. And it can become addictive, and students start focusing on the short-term goal of a grade rather than on learning. So what we need to do is focus on intrinsic motivation. And according to Pink, it has 3 different components: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is all about standing alone in the middle of the field. It's about having the power to be who we are. It's the same thing as giving children the freedom to walk independently and to try their legs. We want them to try their learning. Autonomy requires that you create conditions in your school. The students must have the time. They must have a team that they work with. They must know the technique, so learning the basics is important, and they must be able to control the tasks that they're doing. The second component, I forgot this one. So how much autonomy do your students have in your schools? That's a big question, because we do too much for our students. Teachers are working too hard, and students are not working hard enough. So we must give them autonomy. We also must allow them to master. And mastery is a mindset. I think about it in terms of when you see a ballerina who can go on point, it's beautiful. But what we rarely think about is what did it cost? What did the ballerina have to do to master that technique? Well, if you look closely at her feet, you can see it was hard work. And if you look really closely at her feet, you can see that mastery sometimes requires pain. And as educators, we want to keep our students from having any pain, so we do too much for them. As soon as it gets tough, we jump in and we solve their problems. We must allow them to grow their own calluses. So what's purpose all about? You have a banner right over there that says people don't want to know what you do, they want to know why you do it. Students want to know why. Why do I have to learn this? So I saw this on a signpost when I was in Australia, and they said, this post is reserved for art. It's a very clear message. And we don't give those same kind of clear messages to our students about the why are they doing what they're expected to do. So, I believe that transformation is all about this quote from Louis Gerstner, who used to be the CEO of IBM. And he is responsible for having reorganized IBM and completely transformed the company. And he said reorganization to him is just about moving boxes about. Transformation means that you really fundamentally change the organization, how it thinks, the way it responds, and in your cases, the way it leads. Your job is so important. You must lead the transformation. Or as Steve Jobs said when I first joined Apple in 2000, he says, education is part of our DNA. And so he told me at the time, we have his word that it will always be true. So we're here to help. We're here to help you transform. We're here to help challenge you to let go of the status quo and really believe in the message of this conference. Transformation is everything. So thank you very much.